Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Welcome to another episode of Marc and Mitch Make a Scientology Film.
Yep.
Welcome, Mitch.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy New
Reunited, and it
Year.
feels so good. Yeah,
Yeah,
you too, man. It's been, yeah, it was great. I can't believe it's like over. I still think like Christmas is next week, but that's just because like it sort of came and went, and it was such an unevent. I'm like,
nice.
but there you go.
I love your new setup. I love the background and everything like that. It looks pretty awesome back there.
Yeah. So for your viewers who may not be familiar with what I've been up to, so I'm recording my audiobook, and I had to do this little setup for the audiobook. And I needed, first and foremost, you need a quiet place to do it. And I'm trying to think, I might have something. Yeah, so that's what this is. And so I decided I had to move some of my gear in here. So I decided I'm going to stream from in here. So
Nice.
that's what it is. And
well, it looks cool and it sounds
yeah,
good
I mean,
too,
literally,
so
like this is the ceiling. This is
I can
the
see
felt.
that.
This
Yeah.
is the felt that I put up there as sound deadening. And I sent the files, some test files, off to our friend Jeff Levin, and he said
Yeah.
these are great. They're perfect. This is going to work. So I'm slowly plugging away.
Nice. Nice.
I didn't
Good
have a
job.
quiet background. You had apparently a very quiet bedroom, because I listened to your book and it sounds great. And you said you recorded it in your
Yes.
bedroom. So my bedroom's not quiet at all. So
So we're gonna do so for those of you who are new to the series or new to the channel, Mitch and I both worked at the production studios of Scientology called Golden Era Productions, and I
right,
worked there from 1990 to 2005,
right.
and Mitch worked there from 1990 to
Yeah, infinity and beyond. Well, I think till like 2014, and then I was in LA until like 2017, working at S&P and with
okay, and SMP
our,
is
our
Scientology Media
yeah,
Productions, and
media
it's
productions, which is now it's part of the oligarchy of David Miscavige. That's where the seat of power today is at
yes,
Scientology Media Productions. And all of the in-level executives have been put onto very menial jobs, or they escaped, or they unfortunately passed away. And so Gold today it's a backwater production facility that makes some eye candy for the TV network, but that's about it. They pretty much have no power. But I think they're probably happier, Mark, because Dave is not up there torturing them.
yeah. The word on the street is that he hasn't been there in many, many
No,
years, and
2013.
okay, good. So he
Yeah,
has
I can
essentially
confirm
abandoned
that.
that facility.
Yeah, I mean, I had a brief discussion and exchange with him about it. He said to me, I'm never coming back to this place because there's too many people here that effed me over, if you know what I mean. Like
Yes. Well,
it's
he,
enough. You know what, Mark? I got to say, it's enough to make you think that Scientology is true. That when Hubbard said that you leave a place because you've committed harmful acts against it,
yeah,
it's
he's
just like,
applying his own
yeah,
technology
yeah,
to where he works, which is kind of
yeah,
wild.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so and in the course of my dealings at Golden Air Productions for many of those years, from pretty much 1993 forward, I was involved with the production of the films, and in 1995, I actually joined the shoot crew team that was
Hmm.
shooting these films as in the C organization. L. Ron Hubbard called it the shoot crew chief, and it was sort of like an assistant director type of position.
Yeah,
And
I
so
would
I
say
worked,
assistant director / production manager. Like it combined
yeah,
those two functions, and it was a hot seat job. I just want to say this because you probably won't, but it was a real hot seat job because you basically any ball that got dropped, it got dropped on you. So and you did a really good job. It just you folks need to know that Mark was
they have a saying in the Sea Organ, if a job, if you have a certain job and your hat, that job, you have a hat with that goes with
right,
that job, and
right.
if your hat floats upwards, that means your boss has to do your job. And usually the boss of the film team was David Miscavige. So if your
Ultimate
hat
boss.
yeah, if your hat floated upward, it would float to David
Yeah, yeah.
Miscavige. And in the Sea Org, we had a term which is called hats float upwards, shit rolls downwards. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if somebody else had to tell you what to do, then
Oh boy,
there was
that
some
was the
other stuff that
worst thing
came
in the
with it.
world. Yeah, no, that's definitely right.
Anyway, so the
So
film that we're going to cover today is one of the TR films. And if you look in the description of this video, or if you're listening to this on a podcast or wherever, in the description, I have a whole list of all the films, and there's 16 TR films and there's 10 EM films. And today we're going to cover a TR film, and that is a training film that is called The Cycle of Communication. And this film is it's kind of all over the place, but it also has a lot of historical importance because the first time that this was shot, before Mitch or I ever showed up, this film was shot at the Golden Era Productions golf course. And I'm not exactly sure of the sequence of actions, if they found the golf course and then shot there and then they liked it, so then they bought it, or did they buy it and then shoot the film there because they had a
no,
golf course at their
it
disposal.
well, my understanding is that the golf course was part of the property. It was part of the actual original resort. There were 9 holes that were barely playable because they were in such bad shape. And then there was another 9 south of the property. Then north of the property, there was another 9 holes which had been destroyed, and they always intended to rebuild it, but they bought it. As I understand it, one of the only times Hubbard was at the Golden Era base was to shoot this film. They had a golf course, so he's like, okay, what do I have? Where can I shoot? So he said, well, I'll write 2 very cornball Scotsmen, because everybody knows that Scotsmen play golf because they invented golf. And I'll put them in kilts and those funny hats, and I'll hire a couple of guys that, one at least was British, the other one was strictly American, and I'll teach them to have a Scottish accent, and they'll do this kind of anyway. And so they did the Scottish thing because they had a golf course, and that
Okay.
was Hubbard's whole thing. So
And then coincidentally, the name of this location, when they originally bought it, they bought it under the name of the Scottish Highlands Quietude Society.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
significance of that is that they had a winter headquarters and they had a summer headquarters. And I think you brought this up.
yeah,
The winter
I did.
headquarters is about 20 minutes
Oh,
away,
60 miles away, like
60 miles.
without one stoplight. That kind of 60 miles.
So but SHQ, which Skylands or Scottish Highlands Quietude, also
Right, right.
is summer headquarters, SHQ. So, but
Yeah,
and
they
then
love their codes. They love to
oh
be
yeah,
coded about things.
Scientology never passes up an abbreviation they can
Yeah,
use.
yeah,
But the other thing is that because it had this Scottish motif, the entire property has that same motif. So
right,
every new building and every
right,
building on that property that got renovated got these bright blue tile roofs and
right.
white sides and stone veneer kind of finishes and walls.
How,
And
Mark, how was that? I never understood how that was Scottish.
I
Is
don't
like
know either,
Scotland
but
full
that's
of
what
whitewashed buildings with blue tile roofs? I've never seen that.
we should find a
Ju-
picture somebody, because somebody somewhere got a picture of Scotland and that's what it looked like. So that's what that base
Really?
looks like. That's
Yeah,
what I was told.
I guess, yeah, yeah, that's crazy. One other thing I want to mention about the 2 headquarters is, one, the summer headquarters was in the desert. So of course you'd want to get out of the desert during the summer because it's so hot. So the
Yeah.
headquarters was in the desert. So which I never figured that out because they were both in the desert. Like
It was definitely.
you'd figure winter headquarters would be in the Caribbean, and summer headquarters would be, summer headquarters would be, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it
Well,
was
I
crazy.
think that was another thing just to confuse people because it didn't make any sense, really. So,
Oh yeah.
just
Hey,
like everything else in
yeah.
Scientology.
Well, we got a note. We got a note from Mark Fisher that Barry Stein. You remember Barry Stein?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an architect. He
Yes,
designed it.
Barry.
So
Well, yeah, he designed, that's true. He did design that whole property. And he was in what was called the landlord office, the international
Yeah. Well,
landlord
actually,
office.
I think back then they called it the architect's office, and then later they switched it to the
Yeah, or
landlord.
the architect was in the
Yeah, something
landlord
like that.
office or
Yeah, the
something like that. But
landlord
yeah,
office. Yeah, very sort of the landed gentry.
yeah. And so, because they had shot this film, there was a blueprint for this film that existed, that L. Ron Hubbard. This is another one of the films that L. Ron Hubbard not only wrote the script
Right.
and directed, but
Right.
he also had something to do with the original production of it, which we
Yeah.
redid
Yeah.
completely. We didn't save. Did he have
No.
VOs? And he did. Did he do VOs or
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
voiceovers for this
Yeah.
one?
Yeah. Yeah. He recorded voiceovers, so we used the voiceovers.
Yeah. So we were shooting the pictures, and then they had an original L. Ron Hubbard voiceover that they would lay down
Yeah,
on
I
the
wish they
film.
did with. I just remember that, Mark. They did it with the 16 mic setup. Remember that?
Yes.
They had this setup just for Hubbard. It was like it looked like a cat scratch, because it was like a post with carpet on it, but it was as
Yeah.
tall, like it was probably 6 foot tall, and it had 16 mics attached to it. Each one of those mics cost thousands of dollars,
Yeah. I always
attached to a
thought it.
gooseneck. Yeah,
We called it the Medusa rig because
yeah, it looked like
just looked
yeah.
like it had all these goosenecks coming out of it,
But
all these
he had
microphones.
he had all these theories about you needed to record a voice coming out of different parts of the body. Maybe it was BTs. It was a BT. Those are BT mics, and
Yeah,
maybe
it was a
that's what that
body
was.
Thetan enhanced
Yeah,
mic
yeah.
setup.
They were
But
for aliens.
oh my god, I totally forgot about that
Yeah,
thing.
I know.
You know what's funny is I don't think we used it that much after
No, it
doing it
just
with
sat there in
Hubbard.
the studio. Like, no, we never used it. Like, I did hundreds and hundreds of hours of voiceover recording in that studio, and that thing was just in the booth, shoved off into a corner. They never used it again.
And when you did those, did you record those in right next to the L. Ron Hubbard Music Studio in what was called
Yeah, in the
Lower
lower
RAV?
RAV. Yeah, or
Yeah.
Ron's audiovisual. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes.
We recorded,
Okay.
after Chick Corea, the jazz pianist, he sold his studio, Mad Hatter, which was a really famous studio. I mean, Paul McCartney, tons of the list of people that recorded in there was insane. When he moved to Florida, he sold it to the church. They renovated it, and because it was called Mad Hatter, they made everything like, Alice in Wonderland, like,
Oh yeah,
the
they
team.
kept the name and everything.
Yeah,
They embraced
and
and
they
also, to be fair,
yeah.
it wasn't that nice when by the
No,
time we bought it.
it was crap.
It was
It was
very
shit.
rundown. I
Yeah,
know
it
I
was.
used to when I was when I was in the 80s when I was a kid, I used to actually refill the vending machines at the Mad Hatter for a guy, a Scientology guy that would fill all the vending machines
Yeah,
around different Scientology
yeah.
companies. But
Well,
yeah, it was
today
pretty
it's
run down.
yeah, today it's part of Scientology Media Productions, but for a long time it was part of Gold, and then we would use it for sometimes we needed something really quickly, and it was too inconvenient to get somebody to come up to Gold, so I would go down there, and which was
Yeah.
always welcome.
And for those of you who are wondering, Golden Era Productions is in the middle of the desert.
Yeah,
It's in its own town that's called Gilman Hot Springs
right.
in I want to say it's Riverside County.
It is Riverside County. It's
Yeah, and then the Scientology Media Productions and Mad Hatter and these other places that we were talking about, they're in Hollywood. So
right.
to get actors to come all the way out to the desert to record a 10-minute voiceover is kind of ridiculous. And we did it on a regular basis. So when they got these facilities in Hollywood, it just made it easier to get voiceover actors or just regular actors or
Yeah, plus you
whatever.
get a guy driving 4 hours, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, where you could have him, in the booth for that time. It's a whole different deal.
Yeah. You're
Yeah, and
paying for
then
a full day, even though you might not even
yeah,
get a
yeah,
half day.
they hated that. They hated paying people to drive. They're like, "Why don't we pay you to drive up here?" You blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's just their whole idea of, they have a thing. I mean, we haven't even started talking about the film yet, but Hubbard wrote about this thing called exchange. Remember?
Yes. Exchange conditions.
Yeah, and some of it was very common sense, and like it's basically like a criminal exchange is you take something, you give nothing back, and then exchange in abundance at the very top is you give back more than you took. In other words, you really go that extra mile. Their exchange is horrible. Like they don't want
Yes.
to, yeah, they don't want to pay actors to drive up there. They don't want to do it. Their exchange is just completely out. I got to switch headset real quick.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about
Oh
that.
yeah, that's a good point, Mitch. They want when they give somebody $100, they want $150 product delivered to them. But when they get $150 product from somebody, they want to give them $100.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I can hear now. Oh, I
Perfect.
guess we should talk about the film.
Yeah, that's part of
We'll
this
get there.
what these videos do.
Yeah,
And now
exactly.
in a lot of cases, the film there may not be a lot of other what are called references or policies or bulletins on a certain subject that are covered in these films, and
Right,
sometimes the film might be the only place where this L. Ron
right,
Hubbard, what he calls technology, exists. For this film, he had written extensively about communication and what Hubbard referred to as the cycle of communication. And
right,
the reason that this is a Scientology training film is that Hubbard believed that in order for someone to become a counselor, what they call an auditor in Scientology, is that you have to have a very firm grasp of this cycle of communication in Scientology, because that's essentially how auditing, the entire subject of auditing, works. It's based on this
right.
cycle of communication, and Hubbard, and this is an you'll see, Hubbard had broken this thing down into my in increments of minutia that
Yeah,
every Scientologist has to learn, and they have to get it like drilled into their brain that this is how things work. And so this film is based off of a Hubbard Communications Bulletin that explains what the cycle of communication is. Do you want to say anything more than that, or should we just
well,
move
yeah,
on?
I mean, the granularity with which he broke it down is completely insane. It didn't make it easier to communicate. It's like if you imagine, I mean, I'm not a golfer, but I can get the concept that a golf swing has many parts to it, right? So if you're sort of have somebody break down your golf swing and you're expected to sort of follow those religiously and rigorously, you're probably never going to learn to swing a golf club. And yet, the standard a person is held to in Scientology as a practitioner is perfection. I mean, that is actually in a film. So the standard is perfection. So I don't know. Do you think we should read part? I mean, it's absolutely the level of
Let me put it up
granularity.
here. There.
Yeah,
Oh,
put it
sorry.
up.
So this is a what's called a Scientology Hubbard bulletin in Scientology, and anything in Scientology that is white background with red text, that means it's a bulletin, and it has to do with Scientology procedures or technology in how counseling or training of Scientologists works. And so this one is about, there's a whole bunch of axioms that L. Ron Hubbard wrote about. And this is axiom number 28 amended. And it says,
I, I I don't even remember any of the other ones. I mean, he was insane about making things seem sciency.
yes, he
Like,
really wanted to kind of make this a legit thing. So he had all
yeah,
these axioms and formulas and procedures and conditions and all these different things that if you did this, then it would lead to the next thing, and so on and so forth. And it is an extreme amount of mumbo jumbo. But the reason I think we should read this is because we had to essentially take a film and make a
yeah,
20-30 minute film out of this, what you're going to read here. And that's why I wanted to just read it, because if you see what we're reading and then you think, oh, that's going to be the most amazing film ever, it's not the way it's going to
yeah,
work.
no. Well,
um
I'll tell you what. Let me start, okay?
okay,
'Cause I've got it up here big on my screen so I can read it.
perfect,
So if you
then you
notice
do
that
it.
the first paragraph is bolded,
Yes.
So usually Hubbard, he prioritized the importance of various different things. So he would always try to boil down the most important piece of data, and then he'd put that in bold. So if you're going to learn anything, you got to learn that. So this is Axiom 28. Communication is the consideration and action of impelling an impulse or particle from source point across a distance to receipt point with the intention of bringing into being at the receipt point a duplication and understanding of that which emanated from the source point. Okay.
That's a lot.
So I said, when we first came on, Mark said, hi. And I said, hey, Mark, hi. That was that entire formula.
Yes. And this is the other thing. We're going to kind of talk about the different scenes that we shot that explain these different things.
Yeah.
But in Scientology, to break it down, and that's another thing they have in Scientology is, so they have what's called a cycle. And a cycle
Right.
is a start, a change, and a stop.
Right.
And anything that they do in Scientology, they refer to as a cycle. So did you finish the Rolling Stones cycle? Or did you guys do the pre-production cycle, or anything that they talk about, they refer to it as a cycle. And one of the things that they have in Scientology is the communication cycle. And this film is called The Cycle of Communication. And so when you read the rest of this, that will sort of, I think it kind of comes into play on the
you want me to read more?
Well, I can read the next
part. You
part.
read the next one. We'll go back and forth.
It says the formula of communication is cause, distance, effect, with intention, attention, and duplication with understanding. So if you have those things, that is a cycle of communication. There is a start, a change, and a stop. There's a cause, a distance, and an effect. And in Scientology, if you say something to someone and they don't recognize that you said something and acknowledge that you said something, then they're sort of like stuck in this cycle of communication where they've originated something, but you don't answer them. If you want to drive a Scientologist crazy, don't ever acknowledge anything that they say. Just start talking. Like if they say, hey, Bob, how's it going? You go, did you hear about what happened to Janice? You don't even have to say, hey, Bob, I'm doing okay. Or, hey, Jim, I'm okay. You don't say any of that. You just start a new cycle of communication. And they actually can get kind of like robots in this. They will short circuit if you never acknowledge their communications, because it's ingrained in them that if somebody doesn't acknowledge your communication, then they have no idea what you've said. They may not have even have heard you at all. And it's a really, when Scientologists talk and have conversations and they're dealing in the business world, they are thinking about all of this when it's always happening. They're like a person that's been programmed to talk or to act in a certain way. And whenever they're doing that, this becomes second nature to them. All of this mumbo jumbo that L. Ron Hubbard's talking about here.
Yeah, well, The other thing you could do is, you could always also prematurely acknowledge them, like in the halfway through their sentence, go, good, before they're done, and they'll go a little nutty. But
they will, and that's another thing, is that they teach you all of the things that someone does when they are having this cycle of communication, where they have a thing called a half acknowledgement. And a half acknowledgement is meant to encourage a person to keep talking, because you're not fully acknowledging them. If you fully acknowledge them, then they'd stop. But if you just kind of go, oh yeah, really? If you kind of incite them to keep talking.
Yeah, so you're inviting them to continue on. But you hear a lot of this stuff really robotically, and you recognize, they're giving me a half act because they want me to continue. It becomes like this weird part of the whole, cycle of communication. It's really bizarre.
If there's one thing they do in Scientology, is that they assign information and significances to tons of things that really shouldn't have any significance to them.
Right.
Like they're just like, who, nobody cares. This is
Right.
silly. We don't even need to talk about this. But they make it like they analyze it down to the nth degree.
Yeah,
And
and
this
also, yeah,
film is,
yeah,
we had to shoot all these different interactions and explain that's another reason why I think the films were important to Hubbard, is that people were not able to digest his mumbo jumbo,
right,
and unless they saw somebody doing the mumbo
right,
jumbo.
right,
And so that was the key. That was the reason we had to do these films. So you could see this is what he meant when he said this. And then you'd watch it and you'd be like, oh, I
right,
get it.
right. Do you remember, Mark, how the film ended? It ended with two Sea Org members. One of them, I think, was what's his name?
Chris Olander.
Yeah, Chris Olander. There were these two Sea Org members in like hardcore Class A uniforms. We're talking full space Navy, you know,
Yes. Fake Navy space, like
yeah, like full
epaulets
regalia.
and
Yeah,
campaign ribbons and the whole
yeah,
deal.
yeah, form, and they're sort of faced off with one another, and they're doing the full. And so here it is, the cycle of communication in full. It's something like 24 steps. There's intention, attention, then there's, you impel the particle, then there's the receipt, and it just goes on and on and on. You're
And
just
we
like,
had to do thought bubbles for them too. So
yeah,
that it was really just a graphic where these guys would
yeah,
be
yeah.
standing
It
here
was
and
like
then
a
one
living
guy,
graphic.
yeah, one guy would be like, oh, I got an
Yeah,
idea. And then that would
exactly.
be the whatever, the
Yeah,
cause. And then he would be like, I think I'm going to tell this guy about the idea. And then they would have these lines that would draw to the next
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
And then you'd see the distance, because you have to have cause and then distance. And then
Right,
at the other, and that's where the guy, when he gets the
right,
communication, that's the effect.
right.
Oh my God. And
Yeah, and then we yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I think I was going to say the exact same thing. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and so there's a lot of basic concept. Okay, for different of these films, these 26 films, they appear on different courses. Some of the films, like we've talked about the one with Jason Begay with the space guy who, like, turned out,
TR13, the session.
yeah, it turned out that this guy had, drugged and essayed his best friend's girlfriend and blah, 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 blah. So that film you only saw on what's called the Class 5 internship. So when you're studying to be what's called a Class 5 auditor, and either on the Class 5 is an internship, and on that internship, that's where you would see that. And then there are some films like the Cycle of Communication that you see from day one, from the first auditor training course you take. So this is a basic fundamental film, and whatever is in this film permeates. Where did I go?
That was me. Sorry.
That's
I
okay.
noticed that the PDF was blowing out
Oh,
it
oh,
was lighting me so brightly, so I minimized it and then it just disappeared. But here we go. That's
okay.
better.
Well,
Sorry.
that's okay. No problem. I've turned these things off, but for you, there's
Oh yeah, you've got your thing. You've got your. I can do
yeah,
this
I
too.
upgraded my computer, but I figured out how to turn them off so they don't happen randomly.
Nice.
Because Apple they turn them on by default, whatever. So this film, it cannot be stressed enough that this is fundamental, foundational to Scientology, and it provides a lot of stuff that ends up as giving people the means to what do you say, to judge each other, to be
Yes.
judgmental, because a lot of this stuff ends up in judgmental. And one of the sort of basic pieces of information that's in this film is the concept of being interesting versus interested, right?
Yes.
And this becomes, I want to get your take on this, Mark. Um, this
Oh,
becomes,
I- I'm gonna be able to tell
yeah,
you a lot
yeah,
on this because I've been accused. I was accused of this my entire Sea Org
yeah,
and Scientology career.
yeah. So there's a lot of judgmental evaluation in this. But go ahead, but you know what I'm talking about, Mark.
Yeah. Well, so in Scientology, if you're interested in something, that's a good thing. If you want to understand Scientology and you want to study Scientology, then you're interested in Scientology. If you're interesting, then that means you're in the business of putting on a show or doing something so that people will be interested in you,
Yeah.
not in Scientology. So in Scientology, it's really drummed into people to not be interesting, but to be
Mm.
interested. And
Yeah,
it's
it's like an insult. The guy's just nonstop trying to be interesting. He's just
yeah.
trying to be interesting.
If you're making jokes or if you're making
it
fun of
makes people
things,
self-conscious. It's horrible. It's like, I mean, sure, there's times to be interesting and there's times to be interested, but it becomes such dogma.
yes,
I mean, the idea is if you're trying to help somebody, like they're saying an auditor is trying to help you, that person needs to be interested in you. Like if the person says to you, "What's wrong?" Like let's say this is in life, somebody says to you, "What's wrong?" And you say, "Well, I fell off my bicycle and my knee really hurts." And you say, "Oh, that happened to me once. I remember once I was driving down the street." And you turn and then you become interesting. That's not a good thing. So
yeah.
it's not that this is patently false. It's just it's applied with such dogma and in
Yeah.
such a way that drives people to evaluate one another that
They
it's
also
horrible.
and they also apply anything that might be a certain way for the counseling. They just apply that to everything in general.
Yeah,
So just like
yeah,
you said, so
yeah,
if you were just being interesting and you weren't a counselor, you were just messing around or
yeah,
something, then at a Scientology school,
yeah,
that's where
yeah,
I would
yeah,
get lit up. At
yeah,
Scientology school,
yeah,
they'd be like, "Hey, Headley, you're supposed to be interested, not interesting," and you're like,
yeah.
"What?" I'm like, I'm just doing my thing here, like I don't
Yeah,
give a shit
I
about
think
any of this
I think we
nonsense.
got that a lot. So we decided let's go on YouTube where
Yes.
where
Oh yeah, that's here. Here we go. Here we
yeah,
are.
we're being
Everybody who
interested.
knows me from when I was younger, like, yeah, checks out, checks out.
Yeah, yeah, but you better be interesting if you're going to do this.
Yeah,
God damn it,
this
you
is not
better.
a thing you don't want to be interested.
Yeah,
You want to be interesting. But let me read this last part here
please.
of the thing, and then we can get rid of this.
Yeah,
The component parts of communication are consideration, intention, attention, cause, source point, distance, effect, receipt point, duplication, understanding, the velocity of the impulse or particle, nothingness or somethingness. A non communication consists of barriers. Barriers consist of space, interpositions such as walls and screens of fast-moving particles, and time. A communication by definition does not need to be two-way. When a communication is returned, the formula is repeated, with the receipt point now becoming a source point and the former source point now becoming a receipt point. L. Ron Hubbard founder, blah, 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 blah,
yeah. I'm
blah,
so
blah,
glad that
blah.
I know that. If I couldn't imagine how I could survive without knowing that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
So we had to show in the film,
I
we
counted
had to,
15. By the way, I just counted 15 parts of the cycle of the communication.
yeah, and we had to show all variations. So we had to show those things with barriers or with walls or with, we had to kind of,
Right,
that's where you get, it's almost like an endless equation. Depending on how many you want to show, you have to show the
right.
good ways and then the bad ways, but with all these other arbitrary other factors built into whatever it is. And we had to show what happens. Like, I think one of the golf things was basically the guy's going to hit the ball
Right,
and he says four and he hits the ball and the other guy doesn't get it. The other guy
right,
that's standing out there is like, duh, he didn't receive the communication.
right,
So, of course, he gets hit with the ball.
right.
And so then we had to show the guy saying four, and then you show communication, and then you say distance, and then the guy goes,
Yeah.
uh, and then it hits him. I just realized one of the guys
What?
we used was the guy that was that went to hell in the TR-14 film, the
Yeah,
confessional
Doug.
TRs. Doug, we used that actor. He was one of
Yeah.
the golf guys, and he had his curly, Doug hair.
Yeah, he was like a heartthrob. Everybody loved him. Girls loved him. Doug was a really good looking guy.
And because they were in Scottish outfits, they had like plaid, jackets with vests, and then what are those
Kilt.
kind of
They had a
pants?
kilt.
Well, I think we had some kilts, but then we also just had the pants that were like knee
No,
highs that were.
no, they wore kilts. They wore the
They
kilts with the
all
knee
wore
socks.
kilts.
They had like a tam
Oh
o'shanter
yeah,
hat. Oh
it was the
yeah,
knee socks. It was the
yeah. No,
knee
they
socks.
definitely. These guys were full blown. You know,
It
Scott. I
was
don't.
ridiculous, guys. It was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. They were not Mel Gibson. They were not Braveheart kind of Scottish guys. They were
And
like,
I'm not sure we had like an accent coach on set to
no,
make
we
sure any of
didn't.
these
We know
accents
we
were being
didn't.
pulled off at all.
No accent coaches are allowed.
But so Doug was American, but we also had another guy. His name was John Was it Wheatcroft or Wheatcraft Page? John Page.
Yeah, I knew him as John Page, the other actor,
John Page.
the British actor, and he had a small part in Titanic, and that was pretty much all you heard about 24/7 with John was
Yeah, it was that he did that Titanic
yeah
thing.
that
Well,
he
I
was
remember.
had a walk on speaking part in Titanic.
I remember because we used him for voiceovers for other things. I think we might have even done a version. I don't remember what it was, but we did radio ads or Can We Ever Be Friends spots, or we did some kind of audio stuff with John Page as well. And I think I want to say that he's no longer involved in anything in Scientology.
No, I don't think so.
Um,
He reached out to me, I think, on Facebook
yeah,
to sort
I
of say,
seem to remember
"Hey,
the
you're
same
not in
thing.
Scientology anymore. That's great."
Yes.
So yeah, that was yeah. So John, no, he's definitely not. I don't know where he is. Maybe he moved back to UK. I don't know, but he was a
Yeah, we also
interesting guy.
had, yeah, he was a good guy. We also had Seth, one of the guy who was the sound boom operator.
Yeah,
He was like a
yeah,
caddy. Chris
yeah.
Olander, we had him in there. It was a few actors. This
Nobody,
one was,
no names, nobody anybody's ever
yeah,
heard of.
it was a lot of vignettes, like just
Yeah,
little this is this and graphics, and so it was kind of just a hodgepodge of all these
yeah, yeah,
different things.
yeah.
I think the only consistent thing was the golf kind of
Yeah,
theme
that was the
throughout.
only actual like sequence, like
Yeah,
that. How to. The rest of it was just a bit, a scene, to just kind of. But a lot of the films were like that.
yeah,
Like we haven't talked about it yet, but the one on the tone scale, that's there's there's only one sequence in that whole film, and that's the one where the guy lowers the cans into the well,
oh,
and
that's right.
that's like a sequence, right?
It was almost like Silence of the Lambs.
It was freaky, and the guy that was down there, that was who what was his name? That was
It was a serial
when
member, right?
huh?
Was it Ray Reeser?
No, no.
Was it a serial member? I
I
don't
think it
remember.
might have been somebody related to you. I'm not sure. It was.
Tom Pope?
I think it was Tom Pope. Yeah, the first time we did it, because he was such a skinny little guy,
Yeah, I think
and
you're
we
right.
needed somebody. Yeah, and so the idea, not to get off into it, but that this person
Yeah.
has fallen down the tone scale, so that's
Mhm.
represented. They're at the bottom of this deep pit, and it's just coated with oil and
I
and
remember now. You're right. They had
black
a really
black
long set of
widows.
e-meter leads, and they had like a 20-foot cord on them so they
It's the
could
most
lower
insane
them.
thing in the world. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but anyway, that
I think Tom was in this film too. Actually, now that I think of it, I think he was one
he
of the
could.
golfing
Yeah,
guys.
he very well could have been it. I don't really remember this film for some reason. I blocked it out, but
This film was, well, to be fair, besides the golf course stuff, this film was almost completely done in visual effects. Pretty much.
yeah, a lot of visual effects.
And even the footage that we shot had to go through
Yeah, it
titles
had a
and
lot
all
of
that.
graphics were added, words on screen. There was a scene. Remember the two baseball players? Dun, dun,
That's
dun,
right.
dun, dun,
That
dun,
was the
dun.
other thing we had was the baseball players. And I think maybe that was what Seth and some of the other
I
people,
think it was
some of these,
Darius Wilhere he was one of the
that's right, Darius.
yeah. Video. I'm hearing some, yeah. It's sounding really weird.
Oh, wow.
Now we're okay. What did you do? Did you do something?
I didn't do anything.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, you were
Um,
sounding like Darth Vader who was like shorting out. It was the
oh,
shorting
really?
out.
Oh,
Yeah.
how's it
It
now?
was it was really interesting, I have to
Can you hear
say.
me now?
Be
These,
perfect.
I'm
Like
telling you,
perfect.
um, computer BTs, they come and go. I don't know why.
It is true.
I
Yeah.
literally haven't done any single thing. So,
Yeah, it
oh
sounded
well.
like BTs. It did.
Audio BTs, audio
Yeah.
body thetans for all
Yeah.
you new to the channel. Suppressives. I have, see, that's the problem, is that in Scientology, they believe that all of their problems are from these aliens called body thetans. And all of everything that we're doing, all the films and everything that we're talking about, the culmination of all of this technology is meant to help Scientologists get rid of these aliens that are basically just
Yeah.
squatters. That's what they are. They're space cooties, and they're trying to get rid of them. And I believe that you should embrace those guys. And I might have some
Yeah.
random bad audio body thetans that just every
Yeah.
once in a while they act up.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Well, I think they might be upset because you keep promising to give them a platform.
Yes.
So,
Well, BTs activate.
yeah.
Anyway, so we shot this film. So we did the baseball sequence. We did a bunch of the golf course stuff, and then we just did a bunch of graphics and stuff like that. And I'm trying to think
Well,
of
we
what
did
else.
the interesting thing. We had like we did it like a 18th century British, like a fair, like traveling. Remember that whole thing? And we had the auditor was being a clown and was juggling balls to
Oh,
show
yeah.
to show that they shouldn't be interesting.
Yes.
It was a little over the top.
Somebody, this is the best one. Quicksilver, I just turned into film that teaches Scientologists to act like robots, only to hear Mark in a robot voice.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I don't even know
Yeah.
what that was. That's the weirdest thing, because we didn't really do anything. So
No, I thought it was my earpods going.
Oh, that's true. The only thing that's happened the last two times is when you switch your headphones, I think StreamYard just doesn't.
No, I switched it because I heard that sound.
Oh,
That's why I switched it. So I still think it's the BTs.
it says Mark's sound is. Oh, that's from earlier. He did have a robot voiced. Okay,
Yeah,
good. Well, there we go.
yeah.
Oh, hey, Dr. X is here. Dr. X is. I'm just going to show that real quick. Hey, hope everyone is well. Thank you, Dr. X. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about this film that's worthwhile talking about. We did the Hubbard voiceovers.
I don't know, but while you're thinking about that, if you're watching this on Mark's channel, do think about checking my channel out as well.
Oh yeah, here we can do that. We can cover it. We can cover our.
Thanks, Mark.
We could do it. Here we go. It's we got all kinds of things actually. You can go to Mitch's site, mitchbrisker.com.
You can
And
buy
if
them
you go
up.
to his site, you can get to the book. You
Yeah.
can get to his channel, YouTube, and then if you want, you can just go to Amazon and get the book Scientology: The Big Lie. If you go down in the description on my channel, I have all the links to all of the things I just showed you,
Yeah.
and you could get all those things if you have it.
Awesome.
And if you're on Mitch's site, or if you're on Mitch's channel watching this,
Yeah.
head on over to the Blowing for Good channel. And the other thing is that we have a we do this as a podcast as well. So not every video we do ends up being a podcast, but pretty much everything we do audio only here and there. And we've also do a lot of turn a lot of these the spy files and this series into podcasts, so you can get that wherever you get podcasts. Most people seem to watch on Google or Apple, but just search for Blown for Good and you can pick up our podcast.
But mostly it's on Apple, right?
Apple Podcasts is pretty much the biggest platform.
Yeah, because that's where I always got all them on.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's where I listen to my podcast as
Yeah.
well. Should we do some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
If anybody's got questions, go ahead and go in the chat, and we'll take care of those. We've got about 15 more minutes, so I think we could hit
this
some
is
of
your
those.
chance to be interesting, folks.
Yeah, this is your chance
So go for it.
to be interesting.
Yeah.
Miss Amber Sunshine, love the intro. Oh, well, thank you. Okay, that's nice. Was it the countdown or was it the intro? Because I
The
got a new
count. Yeah.
countdown.
Hey, the countdown, the music. Whoa.
Jeff did that. That's
Did
the
he do that?
outtakes. That's just like the blown for good music, just like the
Oh
instrumental
yeah.
version that just
Yeah.
rocks out, or
Yeah.
just
That's.
a.
I'm gonna have to let him know how awesome it is.
It was. I've had it, and I thought, how could I use this? And I thought, oh, I'll stick it in the. I'll
Yeah.
stick it in the countdown.
Good choice, Mark. Because I was
Rock it
instantly
out.
taken by it. Yeah. I was like, whoa.
Hello from Bellingham, Washington.
I
Or
love
is that
Bellingham.
you know where that is?
Yeah, I've been to Bellingham. I actually worked there while I was in college. I was a PA on a motion picture that was shot partly in Bellingham, which is just not far from Seattle. It's kind of a
Wow.
neighborhood.
Hello from Ottawa, Canada, Barbara Bell. Thank you for that, Barbara. Our Scientology stories, peeling the onion. This is probably Mark Fisher. He says, was that space set up by Luigi? Luigi, everybody at the international headquarters had aliases. Well, most of the people, when they first went there, everyone had aliases. So there was a
Yeah.
guy named Gary Liu, who was a
Asian. He was a Chinese American.
yes,
Liu,
and
Chinese
he
American.
was his
Luigi.
alias was Luigi. I don't know why he had that, but
Yeah.
that was his alias, and he was the one who probably set up that 12 or the 16. Was it called the 12 mic or the 16 mic? I think it was the 12 mic.
Yeah, I think it was the 12. But yeah, 16's a little much.
Yeah,
Uh,
12
starting to
mics
get
is
below-
not too
was-
much.
16, yeah. 12's okay. With 16, you got to go below the waist, and that can get really funky.
Yes, Jefferson Hawkins, the guys at Gold. Jefferson Hawkins, hey there, Jeff. Jeff also used to work at the international headquarters.
Right.
All the people in the chat used to be
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
base. Everybody
This is
that's
like-
it's
this
what
is
that's
like-
watching is like, yeah, I remember going over there.
Yeah, this is like muster.
Yeah, Jefferson Hawkins, the guys at Gold must be very relieved that Dave is no longer there. He was the one who made the place a living hell, and whenever he left, everybody breathed a sigh of relief. That is 100% accurate.
Yeah, no.
When
it's-
Dave
it's-
went off for an event or he disappeared on a legal case in the Clearwater, it was like, now we can
Yeah.
do all the things that we were doing. We don't have to be, because when you're making something and you're trying to build something, you're trying to manufacture something, when Dave's there, you could be doing something that has nothing to do with your job for 6 months before
Yeah.
you're able to go back to work on something.
Yeah,
So
I saw that happen.
yeah. Like this is another thing. We spent years not being able to shoot at that property because we didn't have a studio. So
Right.
they spent tens of millions of dollars at least. I think the final cost was like 30 million
On the studio?
on the city castle.
Whoa, I had no idea it was that much. I thought it was like around 10 million, but I didn't.
There was a lot of embezzlement and a lot of things that went sideways while they were building that.
Yeah.
Like there was a few companies that really
Wow.
got some over on the Scientology.
Well, you know what
film.
they say, it's a lot easier to rip off a thief than it is an honest person.
Yeah, and I think that happened, and also all the equipment and all the things that we had to buy
Right.
over and over again because we bought cheap stuff at first, and then we had to buy real stuff, and then we bought
Yeah, but at least we
cheap
used it
real
all,
stuff.
Mark. At least we used it all. Unlike Scientology Media Productions, where they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on cameras to do, Freedom TV and stuff.
That are
We
just
never
sitting
used
there.
it. Yeah, it's just sitting there. I mean, we did use everything.
Yeah,
I
that's
get-
true. But we bought hundreds and hundreds of lights from Hollywood, like from an auction, like an equipment auction, of lights that were some of almost. I would be willing to go on the record and say that every single light that we had bought in the early 2000s or the late 1990s were older than me at the time.
Oh, yeah,
when
for
we
sure.
bought
They were
them.
these old Mole Richardson units.
Like we were buying lights that were made
yeah.
in the 50s.
Or some of them were made in the 40s. No, this is really old stuff.
We were
Some of the stuff- I
sandblasting
don't
them
know if you
and
remember this.
rebuilding them and repainting them.
and they actually make really good lights. They're older technology. If you want to, like if you're into LPs,
Yeah.
you would be into these lights, right? But the thing is Mole Richardson, who was probably the world's most famous motion picture lighting company, they have a museum in Hollywood called Mole Town. They eventually, the guy who owned that, who was a grandson or something, he became known at Gold. He came up there, did some stuff. he actually ended up buying some of those lights back for his museum.
Yeah. Well, I literally, if you, there's a channel, there's channels on YouTube where they take something really old and they literally, they sandblast it down to the metal and they repaint it and they make it completely restore it. We did that with thousands of lights.
They did that at SMP as well, with all of the lights left in the studio. They restored every single one. It was Sea Org members sitting around day after day, hours, sandblasting, painting, wiring. That's what you do when you have cheap labor, right?
Yeah, you're right. We spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours just refurbishing lights.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it was ridiculous.
And then Dave would bring people in there, point at the lights, and brag. This is the best stuff you can get. We had to get the old stuff because remember they used to do that. Okay, here's a classic one, the SEI light meter.
Oh yes.
This is crazy. There's this light meter that Hubbard used to use that is essentially, I think it was invented no later than the 50s, maybe the 40s or even the 30s. It's what's called a spot meter. In other words, it reads a very tiny spot of you put up, a guy holds a block made out of chalk, because that's 100% white reflective, and then you read with a very tiny dot. You read the light reflecting off of that thing. There's two ways to measure light. One is the light reflecting off of it, and the other is the light falling on it. One's an incident reading, one's a spot reading or reflective reading. So Hubbard, back to his still days, he used this thing, and you looked at it and you twisted it and you lined up these things, and it was this insane, bizarre ritual that took many minutes. When that company went out of business, Gold bought the company.
They bought all of the parts. They bought all their stock. They bought so that they would have these things for the rest of time. And the guy that's in charge of all of L. Ron Hubbard's film equipment, he's called the F&EIC, the Films and Equipment in Charge. And that guy's name was Jeff
Baker.
Yeah,
and that's part of that unit is part of the CMO.
Yes.
So that's a very highly ranked.
It's in L. Ron Hubbard's organization called the Commodore's Messenger Organization for Golden Era Productions. So there's a specific Commodore's Messenger organization that's just assigned for Golden Era Productions. And they have Ron's films and all his equipment. So all his cameras, all his anything that had to do with film, anything photography, that guy was in charge of.
Yeah,
and that
he
other
had the
guy,
Hubbard. I just want to say he had the ultimate rich man's camera collection.
Oh yeah, down to having like a fold-up camera from when he was in the the Cub Scouts, or all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, supposedly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He carted that around all with him everywhere, and it made it up at his house at the headquarters.
Someday I'm going to be a cult leader, and they're going to worship everything I ever.
But then that other guy we were talking about earlier, Luigi, he was Ron's audiovisual. So he had all L. Ron Hubbard's tapes, tape recorders and microphones and all of his audiovisual equipment. That guy was in charge of keeping track of and restoring and keeping them all perfectly intact and maintained. Right. And so these guys, they were the senior technicians at Golden Era that would oversee what we did. So if there was a bad audio recording, then Ron's audiovisual would come down and be like, oh, what'd you guys do with the Nagra tape recorder or whatever? But this guy that was the film's equipment in charge, he had the same light meter that the assistant cameraman for lighting on the Golden Era shoot crew, they both had these things, but they were the only two people that had them. So sometimes if there was a thing that was misexposed or there was a thing on the lighting, then this guy, Jeff Baker, would bring his meter down and they'd have like a little shootout to make sure that theirs were matched or calibrated to each other. And
the world would stop.
It was the most bizarre thing because they have, whatever Spectra or whatever the company is that makes these light meters. They have these fancy dancy digital ones that you can buy. And if they're like $50, you hold them up and you go, and it says, this is the setting. This is how bright the light is or whatever. And then that's it. But these guys, this thing, it was like a compass and a sextant like a like a submarine
Yeah, it was like a three-dimensional,
periscope.
what is that thing called? Slide rule. It was
Yeah.
like a tubular slide rule with a
Yes.
little eye cup that you could look into. It was the most insane thing. I'll tell you a real interesting anecdote about this. Before I ever worked for Gold, I did a music video for Edgar Winter for the Mission Earth album, and I did it for Author Services.
Which video? Which song was it?
Cry Out. It was this. It was
You've directed Cry Out?
yeah. The music video. It's on
Oh,
YouTube.
we gotta put a link to that in the
Yeah,
description.
you can do that. It has some nice shots in it. But anyway, yeah, it was after Jeff Hawkins and the marketing unit got ripped up to Gold because we were too successful selling Dianetics books, and Miscavige couldn't stand it. So I was, in L.A. I wasn't working for the church anymore because they were all gone, right? They'd been ripped up to Gold.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been seduced into coming up there yet to do films. So I was just doing my thing, directing TV commercials. And then Norman Starkey, who was the trustee of Hubbard's estate,
Yeah.
gave me a call one day. Or actually, it was it was Susie Watson Taylor. Remember her? She was a PR person
Yes.
at ASI.
Yes.
They called
Susie
me up and they
Watson
said, we
Taylor.
want to do a music video with this Edgar Winter song because we want to partner up with environmental groups, and this is a pro-environmental anthem, right?
Yes.
It's ridiculous. They wanted it to become the anthem for Earth Day, so I hired a guy by the name of Tom Del Ruth, who coincidentally had shot the Look Who's Talking films, right? So he knew John and Kirsty. He also shot Stand By Me. He was a very substantial, well-known cinematographer, and he had won Emmys for his cinematography for TV shows. He had shot pilots for really famous shows like Hill Street Blues and some others, right?
Yeah.
Columbo, he did like all kinds of crazy stuff. He was known in Hollywood as having shot, he was known for consistent exposures. Like he was the guy, without getting into a lot of technical stuff. So I hired him to shoot this thing, and Norman Starkey would come to the set, right? Now, Norman Starkey had once been on Ron's crew with David
Yes.
Miscavige. He was the production manager, the producer, something he knew all about.
I think he was the
filmmaking.
producer.
Yeah, and so he was used to this people staring at a light meter like they were freaking reading Gone with the Wind, or
Yes.
peering through this thing endlessly, and then making an adjustment and then looking at it again and and this ritual that would go on for minutes. Okay, so Tom Del Ruth, who was the Emmy award-winning cinematographer who shot all these great films, this is Tom using a light meter. Okay, that's it, done. Right?
Yeah, they're just double checking. They
Yeah.
know what the light looks
sometimes
like.
he would pick up a thing called a contrast glass,
Yeah.
He'd look up at the sky and he'd tell the camera operator, open up a quarter of a stop, whatever.
Yeah.
So Norman Starkey freaked out so bad. He came to me and he said, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Have you seen how he takes light reads? Oh my God. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what to do. So he said, I'm really worried. Like he wanted to shut the whole thing down and fire the guy. So I called a lab, a telecine place,
Yeah.
and I said, you need to be open tonight because I need to come in there. I'm bringing some negative in. You need to put it up on the telecine, where you convert it from film to video.
Yes.
I need you to transfer this stuff so we can look at it. So we go in there, it's 10 o'clock at night. We go in there. Usually when you do a telecine session like that, the operator, he rides the exposure because the scenes are different. This one's a little brighter. This one, so he sits there with the controls, and as the film goes through, he adjusts it.
He times it.
He times it, yeah. He set the timing at the beginning, never touched it.
Yeah.
Never touched it. I came in with Norman, and he said, who shot this stuff? And I said, Tom Del Ruth. And he went, oh, this is the most consistently exposed negative I have ever seen. That's Norman
awesome.
was kind of like. So anyway, so I had to tell Tom, look, when my client is around, can you just
Just take a beat.
pretend, just
Pregnant
pretend.
pause on that meter for a
Yeah.
little bit there.
But it was crazy. I mean, that should
Oh
have been
my goodness.
that should have been a red flag when I got called by Gold.
Yeah.
That things were going to be a little rocky, but
Yeah. Well, you got to know all about that light meter over time.
oh yeah, the SEI. But eventually the guys that I worked with,
Yeah.
slowly over time, they started using it less and less. They wouldn't really use it unless somebody came in there was like, how come you're not using,
Yeah.
because they learned to do it the way the people in Hollywood did it. So
Yeah, and
it's just
also
like,
that we're not shooting on film anymore either. So there's just
no, but
like,
yeah,
come on.
exactly. But still, don't
I
get
know.
me started
Yeah,
on that.
I know.
You still need to learn how to use a light meter, and
Yes, yes,
you can't
yes.
just look at a histogram and
Okay, Mark Fisher says,
because us old folks.
Yes, I know. These old folks very particular about
Yeah.
making sure all the analog stuff is still
Yeah, hey,
of
Steven
analog
Spielberg's
way.
never shot digital. Everything he shot is
There you go.
Quentin Tarantino and the Christopher Nolan.
Yep.
I'm done.
Okay. Good. Mark Fisher says shot on golf course first, and then they decided to buy it.
I thought
Yes.
I was apt. Thank you, Mark.
Yes,
I was
I knew that.
Yeah,
I
I
knew
had
that
no
there were
idea.
two. Well, there's been multiple versions of how all that happened, but like, if you talk to the old timers that were there back then, that's the story I heard from them. Up here's another
Yeah.
one. We have it's like int base must. You're right. It is. Gary Jackson Moorhead's in there. He
Yeah.
says, "Hey, I built that place,
Yeah.
the 12 mic. Yes,
were
so
right,
it
Mark.
was called the 12 mic.
And you did a hell of a job because Jackson, I'll tell you, that thing was like a tank. Literally,
Yes.
that thing would have survived.
Well,
the
it had a
apocalypse.
floating. If I remember correctly, the entire thing was actually floating.
The floor, yeah, it was on a grid, like a metal grid. So it was an air pocket underneath it.
Yeah,
for
so there was
sound.
nothing. Wherever you stood in the studio, you were not connected to the building, so there was no
No.
rumble that would transfer through
Completely
the building,
isolated.
through the structure, and then into the microphone. I'm telling you guys, the amount of insanity that's going on at the Golden Era Productions,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
these things. We at some point we're going to do just a flyover video, and we're just going to explain what's in this building and just go through it room by room.
Yeah, I wish we could get a drone really close enough to see
Well,
stuff.
some of the drone footage, the 4K drone footage that's been shot is perfect.
Oh,
I'll send you a link. It's amazing. We could use
I've
it
seen
all
some
day
stuff
long.
on YouTube, but it
Yeah.
seemed to be kind of a little up.
Oh,
Like
well,
it didn't really.
I'll show you some we might be able
Yeah,
to
okay.
use.
Yeah, we should do it. We should actually do it.
Angel Hugger says, question, aside from hypnotism and writing copiously like due to temporal lobe epilepsy, was Hubbard objectively skilled and knowledgeable? What was Hubbard objectively skilled in and knowledgeable about? Well,
Oh, chin music.
I was going to say,
Chin music. He could crank. He turned a crank and just shit came out his mouth. He was really
Yeah,
skilled
well,
at that.
somebody sent me a diagnosis from the DSM, which is when someone just has to is compulsively writing and out and just talking and this, and there's an actual disorder, and I think Hubbard genuinely did have that.
Yeah,
because
I think so. I mean,
he churned out the writings and the record.
unbelievable. I mean,
He recorded thousands and thousands of hours of lectures, and he wrote billions of bullshit in just typed and
Yeah.
dictated and you name it.
Yeah, he used to put, at least I heard, he used to actually put a roll of paper, a big roll of paper in the typewriter because he typed too much and too fast to, be changing. She couldn't bother with sheets of paper, right?
Yeah, he just typed in a roll.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mark, again, they used softballs instead of golf balls so that they would show up on film. Oh, you mean in the long shots?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the original one, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
I think we just used computer generated imagery.
I was just going to say we used visual effects. We didn't care
Yeah.
what the ball looked like.
Yeah, 'cause
Jeffrey Levin.
We had them computers.
What was the public reaction to the film? I seem to remember it was extreme thumbs down. Which film is he talking about?
I don't know. I never got a public reaction because I never saw the film with the public. I think the one that we did, I mean, there,
Well, sometimes we did actually show the films at events when they were first
yeah,
filmed.
and there was, I don't know if you remember this, but Miscavige had a film festival once in LA. He rented some of the screening rooms at the Egyptian. It's now called the Cinematheque.
Yeah.
And he invited
Hollywood.
he invited in Hollywood, right on Hollywood Boulevard. He invited hundreds of staff, Sea Org staff,
Yeah.
to come. And then they called me up and said, "Well, you have to be there." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to be there."
Oh my God.
But yeah, so I had to sit there for hours and watch all these films with all the staff in the back bays. So, but who's going to give a thumbs down? A thumbs down means
Yeah.
you're off to ethics, man. You're
Yeah, these are-
that's a sec check and a half.
Yeah, these are Hubbard's writings turned into films. So if you were in Scientology, you have to like hip hip hooray and
Oh
chip
yeah,
chip
this is
cheerio,
like
all that. You got to, standing O.
yeah.
Uh,
You know, Miscavige once told me in a one-on-one conversation. He said he was talking about a specific person. It was one of the mission holders when he busted up the mission system. And he accused this, told me, yeah, this one guy, you know who it is. I just don't really want to say his name.
yeah.
His daughter co-starred in the Doll film. Okay, remember
Yes.
her?
Oh, absolutely. I know
Her,
exactly who you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
her dad, right? That this guy supposedly embezzled $1 million, which is probably BS, from the mission system. And he said, you know what it started with? You know how I knew this guy was a problem and we need to chase it down? Because he said bad things about a technical training film. Like that's where it starts, right?
That
So,
was the
oh yeah,
telltale sign that this guy was bad news.
yeah,
Is he was like,
yeah.
these shitty films are shitty.
Oh yeah, you take that guy and you peel him open, and
Yeah.
you're gonna find the worst stuff. So I don't think there was any thumbs down, but
Yeah. So Chris S says, question, when you made these movies, how would they be shown? Or were groups brought into theaters to watch, or were people expected to watch them on their own time? So these films were shown in what's called a Scientology Academy. So at any Scientology organization around the world, they would train up to a specific level in Scientology, and depending on what these films, what levels that you were being trained on, these films were needed to be watched on. They would have that many films. So like if you were just a regular Scientology organization, probably 90% of these films you would be able to see. And then some of these films would only be shown at an advanced organization, or maybe at the big complex that they have in Clearwater
right.
called the
But
Flag Service.
essentially, the 26 films that we've been talking about,
Yeah.
they were only available to students on what were called academy courses, which are auditor training courses. And Hubbard, in his infinite conceit, said that these films are so good, even the ones that he made, that in and of themselves they would drive people to take courses. People would be like,
Yeah.
"I want to take a course because I want to see that film about those guys golfing."
Yeah.
So that never happened. But
We also did trailers. We shot
yeah. Oh
trailers
my
for
God.
these films too, which is
Yeah.
we might have to do like a special trailer edition that just covers
Yeah.
all
Well,
the
my
trailers.
favorite one was the shootout at the HI where we actually got a permit.
Yeah, to have a shootout on Hollywood Boulevard with
An
cops and
AK-47.
robbers.
Like this guy was letting loose. He let in a whole clip of an AK-47
Yes.
full of Chinese blanks. And the reason I say Chinese blanks is that the blanks for weapons they're rated at different strengths depending on how much
Yeah.
powder they have in there, how many grams of powder. And the Chinese apparently the weapons guy said, "Yeah, I bought these. These are Chinese blanks." Like this was like because they
This is
use
hot,
the most
hot commodity.
really most powerful ones, right?
Yeah, they're not afraid of using that gunpowder over there.
Yeah, because when they train they invented it, right? When they train in the military, they really want reality. And I'm telling you, boy, if you've never fired an AK-47, it's really dramatic. It's like the noise will deafen you.
Oh,
If
it
you
was
stand
great.
on the wrong side, I think the shells come out the left side. If you stand on the left side and you get hit by shells, they're red hot. You'll get burned.
Do you remember what happened? We have to do this in another video
Yeah.
about it. But do you remember that we only were supposed to do it for a certain amount of time?
Yeah. Yeah,
it got
not
dark.
after midnight.
Yeah, and we were shooting until like 4 a.m. or 5
Yeah, at
a.m. or
least.
something. Like it was like pretty crazy.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
we had basically an all-night shootout on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, but could you imagine today with the whole terrorist scene and all that?
We would
Like,
well
they
that
never
now
let you
it's
do
all you all put all of that into VFX, with just even with the nonsense that happens with fake weapons and blanks and all that. They do everything in VFX now for the
yeah,
most part.
yeah, exactly. Like all the muzzle fires and all that.
Yeah.
They do that all. But yeah, and that was Alan Barton, who I spoke to recently. Alan Barton was the guy who I think he was a detective or something.
He was the one yelling to the guy,
Yeah,
like,
the,
"Hey,
the hostage negotiator.
yeah, he was the negotiator.
Yeah.
You know, we have to, we have to do a video just about the trailers, because there is another and crazy story that happened at that specific shoot with one of the crew.
Oh, that's right.
That ended up disappearing
Right.
forever into nowhere. And it was on that shoot that
That's right.
he
I
manipulated that whole circumstance to GTFO right out of the Sea Org. Okay, let's get the rest of these questions. Mary Sue Hubbard, aka CO Bilf, question: Marc and Mitch, in your audio expertise, especially me with the robot voice,
yeah. I mean,
are the
I'm
final
deaf, so.
Ron's journals real or fake Ron? Oh, those were 100%.
Oh, you can't make that shit up. I just
Yeah, that's
you can't.
100% L. Ron Hubbard. But I will tell you that there was, even back when I was there, they were using audio, like morphing or
Yeah.
audio manipulation to
Yeah.
make a guy that sounded, we recorded with a guy who essentially sounded exactly like L. Ron Hubbard. Like he
Yeah.
could talk and read whatever we wanted, and no one would know that it wasn't L. Ron Hubbard. We
Yeah.
had that guy when I worked at Golden Era Productions in the, I want to say in either the late 90s or the early 2000s.
Yeah.
They'd cast all these different guys, and they all went through the ringer to see if they could sound. And some of them were like, "Oh, let's tweak it." The final guy that we had, he could record
he was really
whatever
good.
Dave Miscavige wanted him, and no one would ever know.
I'm trying to think of the guy. He passed away, but there's a guy who was the most famous voice coach in Hollywood. He was famous for doing a Mark Twain impersonation. He used to do a one-man show as Mark Twain.
Yes.
He's unbelievably famous, talented guy. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name. He was hired to sort of be the ultimate, then the final voice coach with this guy. But I got to tell you, Miscavige was really hypersensitive about ever having
Yes.
anybody think that he had authorized the counterfeiting of Hubbard's voice, because then the whole house of cards comes down.
Yes.
Because then everything loses credibility.
He's super sensitive to
that.
forfeiting anything, because there's too many people that know what L. Ron Hubbard recorded and what he didn't record.
Yeah.
So if there was some new recording that was unearthed, it would be like, that didn't happen because they've unearthed every single possible recording decades ago.
Yeah, and he used to say, because I heard him say many, many times that when he would release things and change things, that he was really sensitive to people thinking that he was being source, right?
Yeah.
Being replacing L. Ron Hubbard. But then I realized, Mark, it wasn't that he didn't want to be source. He just didn't want anybody to think he was.
That's
he
right.
wanted L. Ron Hubbard to be thought of as source, but then he wanted to actually really be the source of it. So
Well, he's been manipulating stuff that Hubbard's written for decades. Like he's canceled tons of things that Hubbard said, "Don't ever cancel this." He canceled those things.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have this one from Code Monkey that
Yes.
Yeah,
Code Monkey.
Go ahead.
You want to read it?
No, yeah, I'll read it. Because Code Monkey, thank you for the super chat. Question: Did LRH or DM ever push Scientology films shown at film festivals such as Sundance? If Scientology ever held their own festival, I would go just for the entertainment value. These aren't movies; they're films. But I can tell you, there's one funny anecdote I can tell you about this. There was this film. We did this film, Mark. The POL, The Problem of Life.
Yes, I was in that film.
Yeah, you were
with Mark Toddy and Katie Mitchell.
Yeah. Which scene were you in? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was the jaywalker. I was the one who walked into traffic and almost got run over. And I'm like, "Whoa, dude, what's up, man?"
Right. So POL, interesting film. So one day, Miscavige walked into my office, and somebody walked in and dropped 2 binders of stuff, and it was a script which was only like this thick, and the rest of it were just Hubbard's notes. They tried to shoot the film and tried to edit it, and it was just reject. And so I'm reading through all this stuff, and I come across a note from the editor to Hubbard. And in this note, this editor, she's gushing about how amazing this film is.
Yeah.
They've been editing this film for a year. It's unintelligible. It's the worst piece of crap you've ever seen. And she says, like, "Sir, we're going to submit to the Cannes Film Festival, and it's going to take top honors." And just went on and on gushing about this. So it's like they thought the stuff was actually really of that level. An hour later, Miscavige came in my office, and he picked up those 2 binders, and his neck was like this. you know, he was so mad, and he grabbed the binders and flopped down the actuals, just the script. And
Yeah.
he said, "I want you to just read this and tell me what you would do with it." But 'cause- so he said, "Send Mitch POL," and so they
They
sent
just gave you everything.
everything, years of rejects and horrible notes and just crazy stuff.
That's
like that.
another video we should do. It's not
Yeah.
part of this. Maybe it could be one of them when we do the
Yeah.
trailers, and
Well, it's a public film.
but we have to cover that one, and we also have to cover the What is Scientology film.
Yeah, well, but that never got finished.
I know, but they spent millions and millions
Yeah,
and millions
well,
of
yeah. The
dollars
story
shooting
of
this
that
film.
you have to talk about the Freedom Film.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, there's so many
Yeah.
films, along the point of the question, were they proud of these things? They really had a sense that these films were these films were just revolutionary. Like they're gonna,
Unbelievable.
when people watch these films, their minds are just gonna just explode with like, oh my God, Scientology is the best thing
Yeah,
ever.
finally somebody figured it out.
Yeah,
So-
but at the same time, when there was a film that we shot called Orientation, that is supposed to be the very first film that you watch when you get into Scientology. You're supposed to watch that film before doing anything else. You have to watch that film.
You do. They still do it, and you have to
Yeah.
sign a waiver. Everybody's heard about these waivers, like giving up your rights to sue and all that. The first waiver was the orientation waiver, and then that
Yeah.
didn't work. So then they
Yeah.
kept adding more waivers. So basically, the whole point of orientation was that, you know, it was, as Hubbard put it, to forestall litigation, meaning
Yeah,
once
you
saw-
knew. Once you've watched this film, you know what Scientology is. So you can't say, oh, they bamboozled me. They took my money. They destroyed
Yeah,
my family.
they-
Because we told you that was going to happen when this movie, there was going to be consequences. Anyway, but this movie was only way it could be shown in Scientology organizations was on 35 millimeter film or 16 millimeter film.
Right.
And I was over I was the producer. I was over film production or something at the
Right.
by the time this happened, and I, stupid as I am, suggested all of these films should be computerized and they should just be played out of a computer system.
Right.
This film, using film to play back in the organizations, is ridiculously expensive, and it is the worst quality you can have. And since I was responsible for the quality, it was like, we have to do this a better way. I had to write on a board, I think it was 10,000 times. I had to write, I will stop being a child. I will grow up and stop being a child, because I had suggested that we make digital files of these films
Right.
and to be able to play them back this way. And the reason that David Miscavige told me that he would never put these on a computer, any of these films, is because then they would be hacked. Somebody somehow would get these films. And the funny thing is that I've not seen these films that we've been covered. I've never seen them leaked anywhere.
No.
But I have seen that orientation film, the one
Yeah.
that I suggested
Yeah.
that we put on a computer, on a
Yeah.
DVD, actually, was what I ended up saying. We should make a DVD of it. And he didn't even want it as a DVD. That's how much he was worried about it being hacked. But that's on YouTube. We could link to that somewhere too.
Yeah. That first one with Larry Anderson.
Oh, here's Jeff Jackson again. Gary Jackson Moorhead said, it was 12 mics. I helped build that entire building, floating slabs, a building within a building. Anywho, yes, thank you, Gary. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, One Love 50. We're almost look at the last two. Did either of you see Chow Yun Schmutz's version of Downtone sung to the tune of Petula Clark's Downtone? She came on Liz Fair's. I did not see that. I'm sorry. I'll have to look at that. Jefferson Hawkins, a reporter once asked me if Hubbard was a madman or a genius. I said yes. Thank you, Jeff. I think that is going to Japan. Oh my goodness. There just two more showed up here. Japan of Green Gables. Question, Mitch, were you able to still feel creatively fulfilled making Scientology films with David Miscavige breathing down your neck, or was it just for the paycheck and being ethical?
Huh. You know, yes.
I think you have to read Mitch's book to get the full
the
answer to
is
that question.
yes. All through all of those things.
Yes.
No, I did have. I had moments of real creative control, and I had moments where I had to redo things, not because there was anything wrong with them, but David Miscavige wanted them different. It's very frustrating. It's just like, yeah,
There was a lot of frustrating things like that. We even had like things that were ridiculous, like if the exposure was a half a stop up or a half a stop, and the whole thing would have to be redone. And it's
Oh
like
yeah,
you
well
could,
Hubbard had said a perfect exposure is within a 16th of a stop. You cannot humanly see a 16th of a stop. It is
yeah.
beyond the scope of the human eye's ability to see contrast. But
But there
had
was
to be
also
within.
there was a big anti there was no post lip syncing. That was like
No,
basically forbidden to
right?
post record
Yeah,
dialogue
it's
or
done all the
voiceovers.
time. But
But
I
at the
mean, in the
Golden Era
world,
Productions, we had a PLS studio, post lip sync studio, where you play a piece of video or film on a loop, and then the actor says the line over and over and over again, and one of those is going to sync up with the original film that was shot.
yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to do it because you're shooting a conversation at the end of a runway with jets going over.
Yeah,
But still, they would just.
but that post lip sync studio
Yeah.
at Golden Era, I don't ever remember it getting used more than like 4 or 5
No, that
times,
was
and that
like.
was in the early '90s. It
Yeah, no,
never got used by the
that was like only a degraded being would want to do something like post lip sync. It's just
yeah.
crazy.
But the same sort of policies were also applied not only to the audio production but also to film production. So fix it in post was like a bad word. If
Oh,
you
yeah.
said, "Oh, they can fix that in editing, or they can fix that in visual effects," or it was if somebody heard you say that, you would get in trouble.
Yeah,
You
but
would never say that.
we replaced your face after you left, Mark. So
I know they fixed it in post. That's how they
fix
got
it in
rid of
post.
all the SPs. They fixed it in
Yeah,
post.
yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Oh my God. Okay. No more, no more super chats. No more questions. We're trying to wrap it up. One Love 5100. Question for you both. Did you believe in these movies when you were making them? Were your minds blown? No, my mind was never blown.
Yeah,
But we were doing this because we believed it was what we should be doing. And what,
yeah. I mean, plus your mind would only be blown if it was like a moment of discovery, like a moment of first encountering the material. We knew this stuff. We'd done courses, we'd read,
yeah.
we'd whatever. So we knew this stuff. It was really a matter of complying with the script and figuring out a
Yeah.
really artistic way to execute the
We're
script.
going to go to we didn't do TR1, did we?
TR1 is YTRs, right?
No,
No,
that's
sorry, it's TR5.
TR5.
No,
TR1 is TRs in
in
life.
life, right? No, I don't think we did. The great black and white
Yeah,
masterpiece.
so we have to talk about that one. But that
Yeah.
film, it was the biggest nightmare that we ever did, but it was also a ton of fun because we shot it in black and white.
Yeah, it
And
was a real black and white film. I always wanted to make one, and we
yeah, we
actually,
shot it on black and white stock. We did
yeah.
didn't we use Kodak Vision stock, a black and white version of that? Or
No, it's actually not Kodak. I don't think it's Kodak Vision, but it's the whatever the Kodak stock that's the same as like Tri-X.
yes,
Uh,
I'm gonna research this one a little bit, but one of the next ones, hopefully one of the next episodes we'll do on that film. But that film, even though it was a complete nightmare,
well,
and it
it was
ended in
only
the ultimate fiasco of
yeah, it was
fiascos.
only the end was a nightmare. I mean, when I pitched
Well,
this idea
shooting
to
shooting locations at night and setting up for locations the next day
yeah,
during the
that's
day
true. That
was a
that
bit of a nightmare for the
yeah,
crew. Anyway, we will get to that one.
yeah, that would be good.
But then here's our last one. Oh, it's a super chat from Maria de Jesus Gutierrez. Hello, thank you for the super chat. You're very generous. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. I hope you guys had a fun episode with us
Yeah.
here tonight. We're gonna try and do these at least once a week. I'm also doing Spy Files, and Claire's starting to do Scientology stories and Where is Shelley videos. So we'll try to get these back up to a regular occurrence now that everyone's back from holidays and vacations and
Yeah,
traveling and all
yeah,
that good stuff and
yeah.
work. I was working for almost all of December, so I was
Wow.
very scarce on the video department or podcasts. Here, let me put up a few last things before we get out of here today. I put up Mitch's links earlier, and these are all in the description in the video. But you can get Xenu as my homeboy merch and all other kinds of amazing Blown for Good merch. You can get that in the Blown for Good store. You can also get copies of my book Blown for Good there. That's also at theblowinforgoods.com. And also, we're going to do we're going to cover this in a live probably in the next week or so, but the Blown for Good podcast is slaying it, and we are getting a ton of downloads. So if you're a podcast person, download the Blown for Good podcast. There's a bunch of good stuff in there, and leave us a review. And then, as always, fake Davy dolls, bobbleheads, and SP bracelets can be gotten at the spshop.com. And that goes to supporting all proceeds from the spshop.com go to supporting the Aftermath Foundation, which helps people that are recovering Scientologists, ex-Scientologists, or people that are trying to escape from Scientology or the Sea Organization. Did I forget anything, Mitch?
No, I think you got it. I think that's great. And yeah, just remember, folks, keep sending those messages to Mark and bugging him to do this, because sometimes he takes a little prodding.
We've been doing it. We did one last week. We did one this week.
Yeah. No, it was a couple of weeks. No, but there's no.
Oh, that's
shade
true.
there.
Yeah.
I'm not throwing shade. I'm just telling you how much I love doing this, and
I do too, Mitch. I have fun with these, and also I really a lot of people ask me why we do these. These videos don't get as many views on my channel as other videos that I do, even though they're Scientology related and there's lots of stories and stuff we tell. But I have been trying to document all of the things that took place at the International Scientology headquarters. I'm just trying to document them, so there's a record that these things happened and these people did these certain things at certain times. So for me, I don't really mind if Mitch and I talk for an hour and a half, because then we just documented all the different stories about this one film. And then we also told some other dumb stories that really nobody cares about in the overall context of things, about some stupid recording place where they have 12 microphones. That's where they recorded L. Ron Hubbard doing these old fuddy-duddy lectures. But it's still funny, and it did happen. So we might as well talk about it.
I think it makes it realer, and it's also our oral history.
Yes, totally. I did an interview with this guy named Patrick Bet David on his channel. He's got a YouTube channel called Valuetainment, and I think he has a podcast. And he said that if you just document this stuff, and if people are interested, it'll resonate with them and they'll watch it. And if they don't, you've documented it. So that's sort of my take on this. And I do find it fun to relive and retell some of these stories with Mitch.
Very wise.
And I am trying to get some of these actors on here, but the ones that aren't in Scientology now are very successful, and it's hard to get them to do a YouTube channel, podcast.
I wonder what Larry's up to.
Oh, that's a great idea. We could talk. I don't know if because Larry Anderson is who you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gosh, maybe we should reach out to Larry and Alan. Maybe Alan would be willing to do it.
Alan, I've been intending to get together with him. We had a back and forth email like in December.
Yeah, Alan Barton is who we're talking about.
Yeah. He's the one who took over the acting school.
The Beverly Hills Playhouse.
And he wrote a book about Milton Casellas, and it covers his Scientology experience.
And he did a play about Scientology and
about
disconnection,
and,
which was amazing. So
he's a really bright guy. He's a concert pianist. He speaks fluent Russian. I don't know why the heck he wasn't working for the CIA. I mean, what a great cover.
He would have been the best Hollywood double agent guy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, he's a great guy. I always really enjoyed working with Alan.
So we'll try, guys. I'll reach out to some of these guys, and maybe Mitch can reach out to some of these guys. And if we can get them on here, then we can get them talking about maybe the films.
I'll send Alan a note.
The orientation one, I mean, that would be the most amazing one to do with Larry.
Yeah. Even though we redid that film without a spokesperson, but the one Larry did is so famous because it has those. Somebody asked me the other day, did Hubbard script those lines? Like, who was like, oh yeah, like that whole he thought that whole thing about you could walk out of here today and never mention Scientology again. You can't do that, but it would be stupid. You can also blow out your brains or jump out a bridge. But if you choose to stay with Scientology, we will be very happy with you, and you will be happy with you because you will have been a friend of yours. I mean,
that is the exact dialogue. Mitch literally just read the entire dialogue of the end of the film verbatim.
Yeah, it's really pathetic. And we heard that and we went, damn right.
Yeah.
You stay in Scientology, you might as well blow your brains out.
People cheered when that movie was shown at a Scientology event. They lost
were
their
like,
minds when he said it. Anyway, we'll see if we can get some of those guys on, guys. But thanks for joining us, and until next time.
Yeah, take care.
Bye, guys.